our opening words this morning, let's do them as a responsive reading, because that'll be fun. So find a great book and look for 568. Connections are made slowly. From Marge 65. One game before, I'll read the normal and you read the Italian. And I think that'll be really fun.
The Italian.
Okay, good. Connections are made slowly. Sometimes they grow underground. More than half a tree is spread out in the soil under your feet.
Penetrate quietly as the earthworm that blows no trumpet.
Okay, wouldn't that be weird? I just had a vision of it.
They play a trombone instead.
Oh, okay. Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree.
Spread like a squash plant that overruns the garden.
Gnaw in the dark and use the sun to make sugar.
Weave real connections, create real nodes, build real houses.
Live a life you can endure. Make love that is loving.
Keep tangling and interweaving and taking more in. A thick and bramble wilderness to the outside, but to us interconnected with rabbit runs and burrows and lairs.
Live as if you like yourself, and it may happen.
Reach out, keep reaching out, keep bringing in.
This is how we are going to live for a long time. Not always.
For every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes.
Let's take a moment and just sit in silent meditation together. Lord Narcissus. Today I want to simplify your life. Is anybody interested in that? That's what I'm selling today. Life simplification technology. But I cannot simplify the whole thing. I'm sorry. Y'all are too complex for that. So I wanted to simplify an aspect of your activism, of your work as an upstanding and integral citizen. And specifically, what I was thinking of as I was working on this sermon, I wrote the first draft of this talk midweek. It's sort of just, oh, yeah, I know what I'm talking about, blah, 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 blah. And then 2 days ago, I said, oh, you've said all that before, man. You've got to come up with something a little bit cooler. And so I decided to rewrite it yesterday. And it was on brand in that it was very complex. So I was up kind of late. So if some of these come with yawns at the end of the sentence, that's why. But what I was thinking about late last night, while you were all in bed, was this question: when people are motivated to make the world a better place, we might find ourselves asking, how do I know if I'm doing enough? Have you found yourself asking this question, or have you heard someone nearby asking this question in a coffee shop in downtown Los Gatos? How do I know if I'm doing enough? Because on one side, right, is it ever enough? Right? Do we ever feel like, oh, that's all the activism the world needs today? I guess I'll just hang up the hat and go to bed. We may never get that feeling, but how do we know if we've done enough that day? I don't know about you, but for me, this is something that it's important to my heart. There's a feeling of sort of restlessness. If I finish the day and I go, did I do my part today? Did I really? And that's kind of a challenging question, right? Or, the reason we haven't figured that out yet is it's a bit of a challenging question. So I want to simplify this question, but in order to simplify it, we have to talk about complexity. So today we're going to be talking about complexity theory and systems theory a little bit, and how this relates to this question, which can be a gnawing question. How do you know if you have done enough? Are you a good citizen yet? How many check marks on the to-do list is it going to take to say, okay, I'm an upstander? Right? How do we need to quantify that? All of this kind of stuff. So this is no small acts in complex systems. So to simplify things, we need to talk about complexity. Complexity theory, the good news and the bad news. The bad news is I'm not a mathematician, so I cannot talk to you about complexity theory and chaos theory and the math behind this in mathematical functions of x's and the axes, and I can't tell you in that language. The good news is I'm not a mathematician, and so I can't tell you about the function of x or the y-axis, or I speak to you in that language. So it's good news, bad news situation. Okay, so complexity theory, just to give a little overview, is, in my understanding of it, my amateur understanding of it, is sort of at the junction of two disciplines. One is called general systems theory, and this is the study of systems. Like a city is a system. They use this in city planning. Like how's the traffic going to work, and how's population going to grow, and all of this kind of stuff falls under systems theory. The systems in your body fall on, your respiratory and cardiovascular system. The family is a system. They use this a lot in healthcare. As I was researching, after I scrapped the first talk that had only stuff I already knew in it, and so I guess I was bored by it or something like that. Then I guess I got to learn something new. Healthcare is really big into systems theory because it's all about, systems are all about the interlocking parts. They talk about nodes and links a lot. So like in the fellowship, you're all nodes, and then we're all linked together by these various links from these nodes. So you can find in healthcare, if a significant number of nodes go down, those have links to everybody else in the system. And so we want to make sure that they know how all of these things are linked together so that you can avoid more challenge than is necessary. So systems theory, the study of systems, and then the mathematical discipline of chaos theory. Ooh. So chaos theory is this mathematical discipline. This is the one I can't describe to you in depth, but it's most famous because of the butterfly effect. Have you heard of this butterfly effect thing? Right, it was in the song, so you all should know about it by now. And this was the idea. The guy who developed this theory, Lorentz, famously said, the flapping of the butterfly's wings in Brazil can lead inevitably to the hurricane that comes to Texas.
Or Alabama.
Or Alabama. Or wasn't it Oklahoma? Somewhere in the panhandle in there. Yeah. More on that in a little bit. So this is, specifically, this is called sensitivity to initial conditions. Sensitivity to initial conditions. And what they say is, it's kind of like if you had two moving things that had almost the same conditions at the very beginning, once you start to move, the change happens exponentially. And so their courses are going to diverge quite radically over a short period of time. So chaos is this science of basically of stuff that you can't predict. Right? The weather is one of those because there are so many doggone butterflies just flapping their wings down there that you can only predict the weather a few days in advance with any degree of real accuracy. Right? The climate, on the other hand, we've had some pretty good predictions for years that nobody listened to until like a year ago or something like that. So some people still don't listen to those. But this is the study of systems. So chaotic systems are ones that you really can't quite predict at all. Like human culture is a nearly chaotic system. I was reading about this recently in terms of the hindsight fallacy. I love rhetorical fallacies. This is just one of my favorite pet studies. The hindsight fallacy is the idea that you could look back on history and say specifically which distinct causes made it go in what direction. But in fact, there are so many various little, like you have no idea what would have happened if Constantine converted to Zoroastrianism instead of Christianity or Buddhism or something like that. There's a place for some great sci-fi. But because of this sensitivity to initial conditions, chaotic systems are pretty unpredictable. So complex systems, though, complexity theory is sort of in between. It's a system, and it's nearly chaotic, but there are elements. It's not completely chaotic, it's just complex, right? You can have systems that are pretty kind of deterministic. They're easy to predict, usually because they don't have too many factors in them. And then you have systems that have all sorts of factors, factors you don't even know about. And then you have systems that have a lot of factors, but we know a lot of them, and you can sort of predict the trajectory of things, and those systems are called complex. Whew, this is about as hard as I thought it was going to be. Okay, is there any pictures on here?
Doing great.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there's the complexity theory. So this is one of the models. These are little nodes and little links, and these links only, and this is a simple one, I didn't want to overwhelm us too much, because these links only have a one node to one, but really these nodes should be linked to like 18 other different nodes. And so if you're into complexity theory, the idea is to look at which links are most important for the node that you're focused on. So if you had a wicked problem, sometimes they call these wicked, intractable problems, like let's say you were concerned about, I don't know, foreign interference in the 2020 election, or domestic interference in the 2020 election for that matter, you would take a look at which node do you think is most important. Is it voting machines? Is it, my favorite one is Citizens United, and then in Europe they found that because of social media, foreign actors can invest as much money as they want to sway opinion, even though there are local laws that keep you from investing money to sway opinion. Like you can look at all these nodes and you can define specifically which links act on that node, and you can make your actions very specific. Right? So you're using complexity to create simplicity. If you just think, 2020 election, how many factors, you've got these primaries on one side, and you've got the other guys who aren't even going to have a primary on the other side, and you've got like all of this kind of stuff going on. Where are you going to focus your energies? You might want to take a look at which of these nodes and links are sort of have the most gravity and the most effectiveness. Okay, so, there's the butterfly effect. Okay, we'll probably come back to that. There's that guy, we'll come back to that. But first, this says, I was going to post a time traveling joke, but you guys didn't like it. So part of my inspiration actually comes from a meme that I found on a complex system called the World Wide Web, the outer manifestation of the interconnected web in which we all live and move. And it said something like, I couldn't find it this morning, but it said something like, I hear all of this science fiction or people saying, if I could go back in time, I would change this one thing, right? Like the old, it's sort of like a morals question in some philosophy class. Like, if you could go back in time, would you kill Hitler? Right? I'm always of the opinion, like, if I could go back in time, would I give Hitler nutritional supplements and psychological counseling? Would I go further back and try to arrange child protective services in that time? Because, anyway, the meme says, if you could go back in time and give, somebody's parents birth control, this is one of the things I said, would you do it? And there's this sense that if you change that one small thing, you can change everything. It's an intuition of this type of complexity. But then the part of the meme I really liked was it said, but people think that their actions today on small things don't matter all that much. Ooh. I was like, that's really cool, because don't we have this sense of like, if you could get a DeLorean up to 85 miles an hour or something like that, and get some plutonium from who were they? I don't know, they were from Afghanistan or something, I think. The Libyans! Right, Scott. Then you could go back and then you would change everything, right? But we tend to think, if I were to say to you, you're the one who changes everything. Bill and Ted came to me from the future and they said, you're going to write the song that changes everything. You might go, I don't think it's me. I'm pretty sure I'm not that important. And it actually signifies that we don't quite understand how deeply interwoven we are. In a complex system like this, where the node you are, like just think about how many links you've got in this room, and then how many links you've got in the world that you walk around outside in, and who you might bump shoulders with, how many links they've got, right? There's nothing that you can do that is small for good or ill, right? And we never know which historical moment the next one might be. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, what else am I supposed to tell you about? Oh yeah, I'm supposed to tell you about this guy, right? If you don't believe me, you didn't watch enough Star Trek. And the latest, this is Evil Spock. In case you didn't know, here, I'll show the kids at home. I know some people find that distracting, but you'll be patient while I show the kids at home. Evil Spock, there he is. You can tell he's evil because he's got facial hair. This is the 60s or something, so counterculturalists with that goatee. And he's making an evil expression. So apparently they found in the Star Trek universe, in the latest series, Discovery, which I highly recommend everyone in the world watches because it's so good in my opinion. It's the mirror universe, and all the Star Trek series have interactions with the mirror universe. I won't give you too many spoilers, but in this one, they somehow they go through, I don't know, a dimensional portal or something like that, and they're in this thing, but the Federation guys are all jerks. It's like the Terran Empire and the Earth people and the Vulcans are like the scourge of the universe. They're like everything we didn't want the Klingons to be. It's kind of like another meme that I got on the internet, which I debated on saying, but everything they warned me about with communism came true under capitalism. Okay, so anyway, but the notion that they present, which I really love science fiction for, is that if one little thing went different, I think in the Star Trek universe, like when they hit warp speed or whatever, and the Vulcans came down, instead of going like, wow, who are you? They went, holy crap, aliens! And that changed the whole trajectory of intergalactic history. Right? So similarly, it behooves us, I think, to think about every step that we take, every interaction that we have, as taking place within this vastly networked system. Okay. So we know this is true in things that we don't want, don't we? Right? Like when Joe mentioned travel, we know this is true because a lot of us, we have what is it called? It's like precognitive anxiety. That's not exactly the word, but like we're already afraid of what might happen because of the complexity. Like, what are all of these factors involved? If you just go on a trip, if you get in a car in the morning, if you try to have a stable democracy, like there are all of these factors that just one little thing can come and, oops, just mess the whole thing up. So we know the power of small actions. I try not to, but I'll let my own political flavors show. You know what happened in the 2016 election in America? Like, it wasn't that there was this well thought out, well planned, articulate, and elegant. That's just an accident. I mean, of course, there's foreign interference coming into, implicit racism and, separating white nationalism, all this kind of stuff. But nobody could have planned that out, right? It's just that we all happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we know that entropy is a thing, right? Things fall apart. And it's really hard to figure out what's going to make things fall apart. The cool thing, though, about complex systems is that they also propose this thing called negentropy. And don't worry, fans of the second law of thermodynamics. You still get to have an inevitable heat death of the universe. Some of us depend on that to not freak out so much about our lives. It's like, oh man, how are they going to pay the bill? Well, the whole thing's going to grind to a halt eventually anyway. Entropy. So everything winds down, gets less complex, falls apart, loses energy. But with within complex systems, you can have small pockets where, even while that's probably happening to the rest of the universe, more complexity is being generated. More beauty, more togetherness is actually emerging. It's a property they call spontaneous emergence in complex systems. So you are a complex system that has this life. It's so weird. Life is a negentropic process. It's taking these disparate parts and sort of somehow accidentally self-organizing themselves into this beautiful and complex dynamic thing. So the first point that I wanted to make is that in a complex system like this, there aren't any small actions. I was listening to my Buddhist teacher recently, and she was talking about, with karma, there are no small actions. And there was something really beautiful about that, because there was this sense that question in me of like, how do I know if I've done enough? In that worldview, it's really that we're all co-arising. This thing's all sort of happening. Our separation is like a magical illusion. And so any little drop that you put out there is going to have infinite ripples that go in every direction. And I said, to myself, how am I going to explain that in a way that doesn't involve a metaphysical principle? And it's the same thing. Where scientifically, there is no real distinct you that isn't just made up of nodes and links. So there are no small actions. Okay, what else am I supposed to tell you about this? Okay, just for fun, since you mentioned it, the weather is a classic representation of complex or chaotic systems, as we learned in Sharpie Gate. No one could have known the weather was so hard to predict. Oh, that was my Bernie Sanders impression. They both go like this. Okay, I tried. So, oh yeah, it's the accordion. Okay, I'll watch more impressions and see. How were we to know that the hurricane was going to get all the way up into Alabama? No one could have known it was going to get that far. So, what I wanted to get to is that we may think, we've been conditioned to think that some of our actions are insignificant. It's actually this programming about monarchs and royals and nobles. There are some significant actors on the scene, and there are some insignificant actors on the scene. And that's just not true if you understand these dynamics of complex systems. Okay, so to answer my question, how do we know if we're doing enough? The idea comes along that if you are living your values, you never quite know which moment is going to be that negentropic moment. And I wanted to get to this idea that, have you ever tried thinking, I'm really not enough, I'm pretty insignificant, nothing I do matters much, and noticed how motivated that makes me? Okay, if you haven't tried that, just try watching the news for a few days straight, and someone will tell that to you. Not in so many terms, but this is the message we're getting. There are these cosmic forces, and you have nothing to do with them, and they're coming to ruin your life. On the other hand, if you understand, you're a pivotal node, and if you want to ban straws, or not have a cheeseburger, or whatever it is, these are not insignificant actions, because we don't know how many ripples are coming forth and affecting those around us. Okay, that's cool, right? Moderately cool. It's supposed to put this idea to rest. Oh, how do I know if I'm doing enough? But that's the part that I've already said before. So somehow that ate up 20 minutes, and I've got to tell you the new part in 3 minutes. Because if the whole point of the sermon was, don't worry, do your best, I mean, that's cool, but you could go see Bobby McFerrin down in Santa Cruz next week, and he would sing you that song. We've already heard that song. So I wanted to talk to you about attractors. And when I first heard strange attractors, I thought that was just what they called me at the pub down the street, but apparently it's a mathematical term in chaos theory. So attractors are what they talk about in these chaotic systems, right? They can't quite talk in terms of direct linear causation. This causes this. But the attractor is posited kind of like a magnetic force, right? Where things will tend toward it. Things will tend toward it. So this is a great example of attractors. This is a model of the watersheds in the United States. Really kind of cool. And so what they talk about when they talk about attractors are attractor basins. And the metaphor they often say is if you had a perfectly round bowl and you put a little marble in it, the marble would swish around a little bit if you rolled it down the side, but eventually it all comes down to that same point. Similarly, this water in the watershed, all is coming down through this attractor basin. So as I was working on this sermon, I realized I had never actually learned what was the origin of the term watershed moment. Have you heard this term, watershed moment? Do you know, where does that come from? We know what it means, right? It's like, oh yeah, that's when great change takes place. It's a watershed moment, but why?
I can do it.
Have you
I
got
know the
it?
story as to why, but I believe it's a moment of potentially bifurcation where water comes down, and at this moment it can go one way or another way. Once it does, it's committed, and it'll go into one watershed or another.
Yeah.
And it's that moment when it can be, where's it going to go?
Yeah. So if you imagine a river or a rivulet or a creek or something like that, the way attractors often work, you can think in cultural dynamics of the status quo. Right? For a long time, this country was white and Christian and straight. And that was just where we went, supposedly. Right? And as the river goes down, if a tree happens to fall in that river, or if a flood comes and the river overwashes its banks, all of a sudden new courses can be created. And this is called bifurcation. Right? This splits like this. So the watershed, which normally just went into this one attractor basin, now you've got a competing attractor basin. And you can actually have culturally or personally watershed moments where you'll see, kind of like you might see in America or planet Earth right now, we have a vast bifurcation happening. And not to put it too simply, but it really is that simple. One says you should have a religious hegemony that treats the environment as something that God gave you to destroy. And the other says maybe we should treat each other nicely and try to save our habitat. Right? And you've got these two choices. It happened in the French Revolution. I just learned about this. They set up a parliament in an old tennis court. And what it forced the people to do is to say, are we going to support the monarchy? Or it forced a choice, are we going to support the tennis court parliament? So what I wanted to bring up in terms of, we all, this is the sermon I scrapped. You're important. Every one of us is unique. The inherent worth and dignity of every, like totally cool, really neat. We exist in an interconnected web. But the thing to know is that in an interconnected web like this, with these attractor basins, you can have these moments of bifurcation that change everything. Instead of things flowing downhill into their status quo, they can flow to somewhere completely different than ever before. So the tension that you might feel, I don't know, have you felt it every morning waking up since like 2016 or something like that? The tension that we might feel, of course, there are elements of fear in there are elements of concern, but I want to propose to you that the tension you feel is the tension of a bifurcation happening, of a possible watershed moment taking place. And so then, in that understanding, when we think about what were previously insignificant actions, of being kind to someone when they're not kind to you, talking to someone on the internet who doesn't use nice language, going to a march and standing up and voting, boycotting certain companies who don't accord with your values. All of these things that seem like little drops in the bucket, instead you could think of as acting in accord with this magnetic attractor basin, which is trying to divert the energies of our entire culture in a different direction. So you're not alone when we think about it in this way. these little nodes are dramatically linked. And you too, like me, at the local pub, could become a strange attractor. Is that my last slide? That's my last slide. Okay, so I'll give you the pep talk at the end. And so today I want to encourage you, to lift you up into recognizing your power. Be revitalized in your recycling, in your voting, and your using of turn signals, your holistic child rearing. Because you know how important it is. You know that there are no small actions when we're all in this complex system together. And that is my Math 101 final paper. Thank you for